Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Quinlan and today I'm going to be talking to you about neo and xenopronouns. So if you clicked into this video, you're probably aware that neo/xenopronouns are a very hot topic within the trans community, and as a trans masculine person, I feel like I may have something valuable to contribute to that discussion, especially in the wake of other big trans creators such as Calvin Garrett and Blair White making derogatory videos describing people who use these pronouns and excluding them from the trans conversation and from the notion of trans existence. I feel like maybe having an alternate perspective from someone who is more aligned with binary transness is in order. So by this point in the video, some of you may be wondering why I've decided to contribute to this discussion now, because at this point, it's for internet time, it's a bit of old news. And this is mainly for two reasons. One, I've only recently come out online as transgender, and I wasn't really sure what direction I wanted to go with this YouTube channel as far as commentary is concerned, and whether or not I wanted to speak on issues within the trans community. The second one is that I didn't really know what to say. I was in the midst of processing the beginnings of my own transition and reckoning with my own trans social identity within the scheme of the larger world, and I wasn't really sure if I was ready to take on any activism. But all of that aside, I don't want to spend this entire video talking about myself, so now we're going to move on to the actual creators who have been heavily affected by harassment for their support or use of xeno/neo pronouns. So the creator on TikTok that has been receiving the most flack for supporting trans individuals who use neo/xeno pronouns, her name is Lesbian Snow White. She is an absolute ball of sunshine. Her eyeliner is always amazing, and I really do appreciate all of her floral prints that she employs in her outfits. So if you're active on the trans side of TikTok, you may have noticed that about a month ago, a lot of trans creators, and to be frank, creators outside of the trans community, started stitching Lesbian Snow White's TikToks and critiquing her support of those who use neopronouns, and specifically by teaching people who don't use them how to refer to someone who does use these pronouns. And look, I'm just gonna come right out and say it that I understand that if you're very, very new to the concept of questioning gender or gender identity, I understand that it is outside what you are used to and how you are used to referring to people. However, I do have some thoughts. Now, I don't want to claim that I am a full-fledged career anthropologist. However, anthropology is my field of study, so I do take these matters very seriously, and I do invest myself into looking into the actual human people who are behind the use of these pronouns. I am looking at the context in which they live their lives and what these pronouns mean to them, and how we can best support this subset of humanity. So when I was figuring out how to structure this video, I think that one of the most important things for me to hammer home to people is that neo/xeno pronouns are not new to our society. They have come into a new level of prevalence, to be sure, in the use in, I wouldn't even say mainstream, but just in more subcultures within the media than there ever have been before. To start us off, the first recorded use of a neopronoun was actually in 1789, where one William H. Marshall documented the use of a as a pronoun, previously used by John of Trevisa, a 14th century English writer, so we can actually trace it back even further to the 14th century. So as we all know, and I won't bore you with the specifics of, the linguistic history of the English language, English has changed over time, and thus the pronouns that we use, or even the concept of pronouns itself, has changed accordingly with the values of our society. So if we think about linguistic drift as a function of the society that uses that language, it may lead us to question what happens to the relation that people have with that language and the use of that language if they are forced to the margins of society. Meaning, how can that language actually reflect their lived experience and identity if it exists in such a way that disenfranchises them? There is presently a lot of debate about where exactly modern European gender norms were introduced, because a lot of early European nations did not have such stringent qualifiers of what makes a man or what makes a woman, and more specifically, what those gender roles actually mean for a person's place in society. People will place the blame on the Roman Catholic Church and that strict set of Christian values being imparted onto other areas of Europe through colonization, the Crusades, and similar religious ventures of missionaries. As a matter of fact, one of the papers that I had to write for one of my courses last year as my final was on the changing of Ireland's gender roles in the face of Christianization, coming from a society that was much less divided upon the premise of gender and did utilize some matriarchal principles. With that aside out of the way, I'm gonna go back and just re-emphasize that a lot of these pronouns are not actually as new as you think they are. For example, the pronouns am, created by Christine M. Elberson of Skokie, Illinois, were created in 1975 when she was commissioned to find a replacement for she and he. Zer, another common neopronoun, was created in 1978, so only 3 years after am was published by Christine, by a person named Mario Pei. So without straying too far from the original premise of this video, I am going to now take it back to lesbian Snow White, and specifically xenopronouns. Now, one misrepresentation of information that I've seen a lot is that a lot of people will conflate neopronouns and xenopronouns. They are not actually the same thing. Neopronouns such as zer and am are derivations from existing pronouns in the English language. On the contrary, xenopronouns are pronouns that are described in various capacities, and I do actually have on my computer here a few different words that are used to describe them. In some instances, they are used in a more abstract sense, so they quantify as pronouns that transcend language. For some people, as I mentioned earlier, who are chronically disenfranchised and pushed to the margins of a society whose language has evolved alongside the values of that society, they do not feel represented by the current English language or the state of whatever their first or native language is. Sometimes xenopronouns are also described in the sense that one's gender cannot actually be expressed through human thought or present conventions of human identity. One thing that is important to keep in mind in this discussion is that a lot of the people who do use neo or xenopronouns are on the neurodivergent spectrum. That is to say that these pronouns serve as a way for people who are neurodivergent to feel more accepted and feel more in tune with a sense of self in a society that is not at all geared towards people who do not have a neurotypical experience of the world. Another thing that I think tends to get forgotten a lot in this discussion is that most users of xenopronouns don't actually ask that people use these pronouns for them in real life. So while some users of these pronouns will ask that in person you refer to them as such, a lot of the time they're for community building among trans neurodivergent people online. And one thing that I've seen a lot with these anthropomorphic pronouns or things like emoji self, emojis, well, some trans kids, a lot of queer kids, are familiar with the concept of adults in your life non-consensually going through your electronic devices and looking at your correspondences with other people. So for a trans kid in an extremely transphobic household, having someone address you using pronouns that do not correlate to your birth sex can be very dangerous. And to combat that danger, some young trans kids will online replace the pronouns in sentences or ask their friends do as such with an emoji so that they are not getting misgendered in these online forums, but they are also not putting themselves at risk where if their parents were to see this, they would not automatically think that their child is trans and thus enact abusive behavior onto their child because of the transness that they're seeing. Nonetheless, I know after saying all of this that it is a losing battle to try and make transness respectable to a population that desires actively to be transphobic and to exclude trans people and disrespect trans existence. So the goal of this video is not to try and justify these pronouns on behalf of these people, because ultimately these people have a right to exist. And at the end of the day, although from an anthropological perspective, I do find, facets of queerness very fascinating, I ultimately want to convey that I do not find that the fact that other trans people decide to use anthropomorphic pronouns either for their safety from parents looking in through their phones or by neurodivergent members of the trans community who genuinely do not feel represented or do not feel that their identities are conducive to the way that language has conformed to the values of our society. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, I guess in those specific instances, maybe those neopronouns do make sense. Like, maybe it's fine if we're talking about a trans kid preserving their life. I would like to just step in and remind you that the specific reasons why someone does that is their business and not yours. You don't get to approach or ask trans people in the wild, why do you use the pronouns that you use? Because ultimately that's disrespectful and it's an invasion of their privacy. Because if they are using them for one of the above reasons, they may not want to disclose their neurodivergent status, or they may not want to disclose that their home environment is unsafe for them to come out as trans. And if they have any other possible reason for using the pronouns that they use, it is none of your business and you don't have a right to ask. So with all of that, I do hope that this video was informative, and I do want to say that as a trans person that does conform more so to the binary of gender, in the sense that I do identify with terms like man, I would like to say that I do not take issue with other members of the trans community existing in a way that feels most authentic to them. And obviously, I didn't cover everything in this video. I didn't give you a comprehensive history of the timeline of use of neo/xenopronouns, and I didn't even get into the overlap of different subcultures that tends to overlap in queer communities. So if you would like to see a more analytical approach to the specifics of these topics, I am happy to make that content. But for today, I felt like I just wanted to put out at least a little bit of positivity and education in the wake of a lot of misunderstanding and bullying of a group of people that are mostly neurodivergent or children who feel unsafe or unsure of their identity in the face of a rapidly changing world. But with that, I am going to go ahead and close out this video today. I really hope that you enjoyed watching or that you learned something. If you have anything that you would like to add to this discussion or that you think I should know, definitely drop it down in the comments below. I am very happy to read your responses. But yeah, if you are someone who uses neo/xenopronouns, you don't have to disclose your reasons to anybody. I'm here for you as a support. But yeah, guys, with the conclusion of this video, I hope you have a wonderful day.